Okay, so let's get started, guys. So let others also to join in between. That's fine, but again, we have to respect the time as well. So I'm just getting started on it, and currently we are around some 20 something people overall. And let me just get started, guys. So a warm welcome to all of you guys to this webinar, which is there on using big data TDD thing. So big data TDD, how do you use big unit for that, right? So that is something which will be kind of doing a touch base on it. I would be sharing some of my experiences about it, and probably if we do not have many participants, if it happens to be like our typical Edureka batch, then I would like to answer your queries if they are right in person. And if the queries become too much, of course within 1 hour session it would be a bit difficult. You can always drop your queries to the support, and definitely they can come back to you. Okay, so let me just get started about it. So guys, a little bit about myself. My name is Vishal Kumar, and I'm having overall around now almost going to be 11 years of experience. Out of that, since last almost 6 years roundabout, I'm working in big data domain. And when it comes to big data domain, it is not just that's Hadoop thing and all. With this is with Hadoop we just started, and have moved now to other technologies. When I talk about others, it's like you must have seen, or some of you would have attended Storm course or Spark and Scala and all. So yes, these are the courses which were launched by me here with Edureka. And again, they are launched because we have started working in our organization in these aspects. So I have kind of moved on to the other technologies as well. But yes, when it comes to the domain perspective, so typically I am having financial that domain expertise when it comes to exposure to a specific domain, and a bit exposure is on the retail side overall. So that's pretty much about me. I think that's fine. Some of you might already be knowing me, having attended some of my batches earlier, right? Okay, so Gaurav has a query wherein he says that is it 1 hour, 2 hours session? It is not 2 hour session for sure. It is we had started it with 1 hour, and probably including demo and probably some queries or something, it might go up to 1.5 hours kind of. That's what is my plan. Great. Okay, so before let me just see how many of you we are here. Great. So we can definitely afford. So guys, what you can do is quickly, you can just ping me on this chat, and probably you can just tell me a bit about, not much about your experience or something. Only 2 things: whether you have any experience from on the TDD side and on the big data side. So you might be having an experience in TDD, but not in big data. You might be having the experience in big data, but not in TDD, or you might be having the experience in both. That's great, Ashutosh. That's great way of asking. I mean, telling that what is so test-driven development, Ashutosh. So that gave me the idea. I have gone through big data training, but not in TDD. Exactly, Mehul, exactly. So I'll tell you the purpose of these webinars as well. Limited experience in big data. Sure. Guys, what about others? No experience in big data, but good exposure to TDD. Great. Great, Manish. And you must have used it probably some sort of web development frameworks and all, like Ruby on Rails, RSpec, Cucumber, etc., or even Java as well. Exactly. Yes, Manish. So I also picked up these things in that framework several years back. Great. So Gaurav has used it in Java and Python. That's great. But yes, there are the majority of people are not, aware of TDD and all. We have an experience in TDD, way to pair programming, exactly. Great, great. So let us, so I'm sure the topic must have excited you. That's why we are all here, right? And let us just get started, and specifically about the people who don't really know what exactly the TDD is. It's nothing new. It is just that it's a different way of, coding, different way of implementing your thoughts, right, in the form of program. So we'll talk about that. And let me just get started with the topics and things like that which we plan to do. So the objectives which we are having in mind at the end of this session, all of you should be aware of what exactly TDD is, and then when we'll be done with what is test-driven development, I'm sure there are several things which are very good to hear, but when we go back, we find out that it is going to be very, very difficult to implement, right? And believe me, we all are having very legitimate reasons to not go towards TDD. You yourself would be able to correlate it, and I would ask your feedback at that point of time as well. So we'll see some of those very legitimate, valid reasons, right? Now, so I will just say that I cannot follow. I am just going to tell you what is TDD, and then I'm going to tell you I cannot follow TDD because of several reasons, and then I will leave the topic then and there itself because we'll talk about it later. Then traditional development cycle versus TDD, right? So your typical SDLC way versus TDD way, right? They are basically that waterfall method, agile method and all. I'm not going in that direction, but I'm just saying how exactly TDD is going to be different in that case. And then we'll be straightforward towards, it's very focused kind of, very focused kind of webinar wherein we are going to talk about why should even I bother to unit test pig scripts, right? So if you have done pig scripts, pig programming earlier, you would be able to correlate to it much better way. Some of you who are going through our big data courses, you might have just covered, or you might be covering these things. So we don't really typically talk about pig unit testing and all in the big data course because of the time constraints, right? It doesn't really allow us. So that's the overall purpose of this webinar, to keep these topics separately. And it's kind of just a value addition which we can do for you people, right? So, and then it will lead us towards, so the moment we'll talk about what is the need of testing pig scripts, because it's a different, language, you're talking about a different domain itself, then it will lead us to the point where we'll be talking about what exactly pig unit is. And then, again, you must be having some experience about the Edutica classes. They are not complete without some sort of hands-on, right? So talking about something is one, and then let's have some fun after this, and then kind of just write very simple code and let's see, right? Just kind of walk the talk kind of thing, right? This is what we want to achieve using that very simple and small demo of TDD using pig unit. You will see various kinds of options which are available as well. Depending upon the scenario in which you are using pig unit allows you to test pig scripts in different manner altogether, right? Guys, are we good? I mean, I hope the objective should seem quite relevant to you, right? I've kept it completely, they are nowhere from the academic perspective, they are from the perspective of whatever day-to-day problems we face, at least my team faces in my organization, right guys? Can I just get some sort of response from you people? Great. Great. Thanks. Thank you. Okay. Now, let's talk about what exactly is TDD. So guys, as probably it was Ashutosh or somebody who was asking about what is TDD. So TDD stands for test driven development. Many times people call it as BDD as well, though BDD is a separate thing. BDD equals to behavior driven development. That's a separate thing that typically goes towards the functional testing side and all. So please do not, try to confuse yourself with these two terms. Now, when you talk about test-driven development, basically the whole idea, why exactly we are going for test-driven development, it's about, it aims to shorten your development cycles. When you talk about development cycles, it's like, you get a requirement, right? And typically those people who would be coming from agile background, or those people who have done pair programming, they must already be aware, right? You typically create some short user stories, right? That a big requirement, you are just breaking it into the chunk of very small requirements altogether, and then you just create multiple short user stories altogether and then keep developing them. When you talk about keep developing them, you are not going to develop anything. You are first going to write the test, and then you are going to develop. Then you are going to write again next test, and again you are going to develop, right? So this is all about your entire requirement is now broken down into multiple small requirements, and each and every that small requirement is going to follow its own short development cycle. Now there is it is out of scope, but just to give you a perspective, whenever you talk about a bigger requirement and you have to break down into very small kind of user stories, the rule of the thumb is that your each and every user story should add some value, right? There should be some business value which is going to be added. At least that much should be. So for example, you are supposed to design a login page, that web page, right? And it is having multiple requirements altogether. So probably the first user story might be just to have a web page. That's it. Blank landing page, right? Second user story might be identify the pages where you need the login details before you have to access them, right? Then the third user story might be that integrated with some sort of login mechanism altogether, and so on and so forth, right? So these are all your small user stories, and they can further be broken down into other things, but the overall purpose is you are going to, instead of talking about designing entire web page or website for a company, you are just breaking them down into very small logical business value requirements, and you are going to shorten your development cycle. That is one. Now, the aim overall is towards get something right now and perfect it later kind of approach. So you should get something right now, working up and running, so that it's like morning when you come to work, and in evening when you are going back home, right? There should be some delta, not for you, for the business as well. It should be, quantifiable, right? So it's like those senior people, they must be knowing it's all about fail fast approach, right? If there is an alert, if there is a failure, it has to happen right now rather than happening later, right? Okay. So I'm not going to talk much from the side of project management and all, because I'm not that kind of person. So, but again, just from the perspective, I just discussed about this business value part. Now, the typical cycle, how many of you have heard about this cycle? Or rather than that, I would say, how many of you have not heard about the red, refactor and green cycle altogether? So Pooja had 2-3 questions. Pooja, I'll answer your questions. You can probably answer me whether have you heard about this red, green refactor? No. Okay. Others? It was not just for her. Okay. So great. I'll tell you about it. So Pooja had a question wherein she said, is it similar to build and test? So Pooja, I hope you just got the answer for your first question. It is not similar to build and test. It is test and build, kind of. So what does it mean? We'll talk about it. Does it involve considering risk as well? Oh, I hope that this question also got answered, right? So great. So sorry, when I am in a flow, sometimes I don't take a question, but I kind of, check at very specific checkpoints what exactly the questions are, and I try to answer them. Okay, so red-green refactor cycle. It's all about, guys, that whenever you, so now let's say, assuming that whatever requirement you have got, you have broken it down to several user stories, and you are working on one user story at a time, right? You are not going to work on multiple user stories at a time, one story at a time. Now, so you have got the very simple requirement, kind of, and first thing is you are going to write a test. You are not going to write a program. Wow, what does it mean? It simply means that you know what the requirement is, and then you first write a test without even having a program, right, guys? About some basic requirement altogether. So for example, you are supposed to, let's say, you have just taken a very simple user story that create a website or create a web page, right? So the first thing is, your first test might be, when I hit this particular URL, our landing page should come, right? This is just your requirement. Now you first write the test. You have not even written the code for it. So what will happen? You will write a test, right? And you will execute the test. What is going to happen? It's going to fail, right? It's going to fail. Then what would you do? You will write enough code. This is very important. Just write enough code to make it pass. Okay? That's called refactoring or coding. In your case, since you will be writing the code for the first time, this is going to be coding. And then when you run the test again, it is going to pass, right? So the first cycle, when it failed, was red. The second phase, wherein you wrote just enough code. This is very, very important, guys. Just enough code to make it pass was called refactoring. And the third phase, wherein it just got passed, was green. Now this is one part, right? Now you have the second thing. Okay, this URL probably you had another requirement in it that it should be accessible only when somebody is logged into your website, right? So you wrote the test again, and it again failed, right? Because you have not yet implemented the integration of your login, whatever mechanism, with your website altogether, right? So again, you have written some test, it is going to fail again. You will write just enough code to make the previous case, test case and this test case to pass altogether, and then you will just execute the test again. So it is that red refactor green. Typically people call it as red green refactor or red refactor green. I prefer the second approach. It is red refactor green approach, which is typically followed in the entire development cycle. Is this now clear? Those people who have not heard it, or who must have heard it but were not really sure about it, right? So this is a different approach altogether. So now how does it add a value, right? I mean, something should come up very well, right? So yes, it is just a different way, but is it only just a different way of working? Is it? Definitely we see some disadvantages of it, and especially those people who have already worked in pair programming and all sorry, they must be knowing. So typically, guys, how do we implement? I mean, it is about the PPT thing. Showing it in PPT is one, then telling you how do we implement it is second. In my organization, in my team, what we typically do is we have a big monitors, right? I mean, kind of those Mac, those big monitors all together, right? And then a keyboard which is accessible by two people at the same time. Okay, now those two people, first of all, in your team, nobody is going to be a programmer, nobody is going to be a tester, right? Everybody is just a coder. That's a big thing. Okay, now what happens is, let's say I am I and let's say Ankit. I'm just picking random name, guys. Okay, so we two are there and we are working on a story. So for the first thing is, I'm going to write a test. Ankit is going to write a code to, I'm going to write the test, make it fail. So my job is to make it fail. Ankit's job is to write only enough code to make it pass. Okay, and then it became green. Now the second test case, I am not going to write it. Ankit is going to write it. That's a typical way of implementation, guys. This is about practical thing. Okay, now the second test case is something which Ankit will write and he will make it fail. And then it is my responsibility to write just enough code to make it pass, and vice versa. So this cycle goes on, right? First case by me, code by Ankit, then case by Ankit, code by me, and vice versa. Keeps on going till the time your story is over. Is that clear? How do you really implement it, right? I hope it is helping you people in some way, right? So this is, in fact, these are some of the things which are borrowed from a different line of thought, which is kind of called extreme programming altogether. Okay, so the test-driven development requires the test itself to be written before the code. Okay, now what are the different what are the advantages which we get out of it? And believe me, you will just appreciate these last 2 points, which are very important. It definitely is going to lead for a better code, which is just enough. I think next time whenever I'll take a webinar, I will make this bold. Just enough. Okay, so you are having a code which is just enough to pass the test and give you the desired functionality altogether, right? Also, following TDD means, how many times have you heard about code coverage nightmares? I'm sure many of you would have already worked on very large code sets, right? People come, people leave the organizations, projects, and then people extend the existing code, again make it work, and then they also leave. Over a period of time, what you just have is a spaghetti of code and just a mess, right? If you beat organization 1 to organization 10, stories are nearly the same, right? There are very rare exceptions to this. I'm not talking about tier 1 kind of companies, but basically tier 2 and tier 3 and all, right? This typically happens. So your code coverage is definitely ensured by TDD based codes. So typically, I'll tell you, whenever there is a failure or whenever we get kind of mails from a client saying that about some feature, first of all, they become very rare things, but even if they happen, what we do is, I typically ask my team, I don't ask them to show me the code. I never ask them. I ask them, show me the tests. That's it. Because your build is not going to complete till the time your tests are done. And we never skip the test when we are building. Very simple. Okay. So it's as simple as that. If there is a mail or any communication which happens from the client, it's all about somebody says this feature was supposed to work in X way, but it is not. We are first going to check the test. If the test itself was written in a different way and the code is behaving the way it is supposed to, we don't bother ourselves. We just tell the client saying that this is a change request, we will take it as a change request. Okay, and then we implement, then again we write the test case and then just the enough code. But if so I hope you have got the idea, right? That it would never happen that you wrote the test for something else and you coded for something else as well. Guys, I hope you are getting the idea about what exactly is TDD, and partially I'm covering the advantages of it as well. Right, guys? Ankit, Manish, etc. Right? Great. Avdesh has a question. Tell me if I'm wrong. Using this approach, is there a case where larger picture of the project is ignored as we are focusing on the small task? Very good point, Avdesh. So probably when you are working on a story, yes, you are lost, and it is good to be lost. at that point of time, because you should only focus at that chunk at a specific time. Then typically these kind of things are followed in agile projects, wherein you have a scrum master and all. They are the people who are going to take care of your larger part of stories, your typical PMs and all, who definitely make sure that your stories are running on time and if there is any dependency. And typically what happens is these kind of teams follow something called stand-up. Okay, it's like, you know, literally means stand up. Stand up and speak. One person is having a token. They speak only 3 sentences, Avdesh, and others. Only 3 sentences. Okay. One, what I did yesterday, what I'm planning to do today, what is stopping me from going ahead. That's it. Typically, when everybody in the team speaks about it, only 3 sentences. You cannot speak the 4th one. Okay. When everybody speaks about it, it more or less makes the entire project picture clear. Okay, and if there are kind of, you know, cross-cutting concerns, they are also taken care every day, right, Avdesh? Right? Okay. Now, Vijay, can you give an example of TDD from big data perspective? Exactly. So, Vijay, for that, what I have done is I have kind of, you know, that last part of the demo is going to answer your requirement. And further things as well. Okay, that Vijay. Okay, Avdesh says, okay, that means the pair people will not think about the whole story, only the task they should be considered. Exactly, that is given to them at that point of time. Exactly, yes. Right. Okay. Now, let me just continue on the next part. So this is all good, but again, I'm sure, I mean, many of you are already must be having some years of experience with you, right? So I'm sure you must have by now figured out at least some of the reasons that it is unimplementable in my organization. Okay, that these things do come in our mind, and you must have heard about some of these things. Tell me if they are relevant to you or not. You don't really need to discuss it, but you can just raise your hand, or you can just tell that yes, I thought about it, right? The first thing is typical. Hey, code is working the way it is supposed to, and I'm kind of, you know, just getting the output which I was told, and let's freeze it for now. We have so much of work anyway, right? So that is first thing. If not you must have heard about it within your organization from multiple people, and sometimes, to my surprise, I mean, it's actually it doesn't really come as a surprise, even from senior people as well, right? Somebody, is the code working? Is it giving you the output as required? Is it? Don't waste the time. Let's continue, right? Other thing, release date is quite aggressive, right? It's all about deadlines, right? Every week, kind of, you know, 2 SDLC, basically those waterfall model, this thing, and project update has to go red, green, amber, right? So it's all about which color is there for your project. Is it green? Is it red? Is it kind of warning sign? You have to give the updates, and release date is quite, you know, aggressive. That is another reason for me not to apply it. Why? Because guys, come on, you are talking about 2 people working together. We are already talking about, you know, low productivity of people, and now you are making groups of people, right? And working on the same system, right? So these are all valid reasons, right? These are all valid reasons. Another one, it slows down your development cycle. Now guys, this is very important, and you have to know about it. Your development cycle slows down pathetically with TDD. Then why are we talking about it? Because this slowdown happens for first 2 weeks if it is implemented properly. For first 2 weeks, because, you know, let's say I am here and let's say Avdesh is there, right? So Avdesh has a different style of working, and Vishal is having a different style of working. Now we both are made to sit together. We both are supposed to, you know, work together. So that initial synchronization, initial way of, you know, communicating with each other, and these practical aspects do come. So whatever individually code we both would have produced, we might probably be producing only 1/4 of this code within first 2 weeks. But over the period of time, once you spend that, that 2 weeks kind of time, and assuming that, things are not seriously bad, typically after that we have seen the overall code yield is much faster, as compared to these two individuals working and churning out code separately. And it is of quality, because your code, whatever is coming, is kind of tested all the time. Right, guys? Avdesh, Pooja, others, that is one thing. Okay, so it's all about that your development cycle is going to slow down initially. Definitely, yes. You are already short staffed. Come on. You are talking about 2 people at 1 requirement, and we are talking about how to give 4 requirements to 1 person, right? It does happen, right? And if I'm supposed to do all of this, what are the testers supposed to do? Why have you hired a tester, right? Another question, is it my job? Is it my job? No, it's not my job, right? So what are the testers supposed to do? This is another very valid reason for somebody not to follow TDD. But as some of you would have heard or would have noticed earlier, that there is nobody called developer, there is nobody called tester in the team. Everybody is a coder. In fact, we typically call the project manager also, himself or herself should also be coding. That is another way, but anyway, that might not be applicable for many organizations. But I hope it is quite clear, right, that these are some of the reasons. And if these are your reasons, they might be perfectly valid, guys. But remember, any of these reasons, or you might be having several other reasons which are quite specific to you, might be valid right now, but they would lead your team or probably eventually your organization itself into something called technical debt. Okay. Now, so just to make the things light, this is kind of, one quote by Einstein, that the most powerful force in the universe is compound interest. Okay. This is not our quote anyway. So the reason why we have quoted this, these are not Edureka figures. They are kind of taken from the best practices. So there are some of the books on best programming practices, pragmatic programmer, pragmatic series and all. You can get these things. It's all about time taken to fix bugs, or some of you would have heard about cost of change, right? Cost of change and all. So it's all about that. If you have a bug, if you get it corrected at the design time, probably if let's say, the time unit which you are going to spend, right, is going to be somewhere around 10. At the implementation time, if you find it out, it is going to be somewhere around, around 200 kind of. If QA finds out and then it goes back to the implementation, basically to the coder, and you have to fix it again, the time is going to be around almost double, right? It's going to be almost double kind of, around whatever, 450 units. But if nowhere you were not able to catch the bug at any point of time, then it's only the client who will find the bug, right? And at that point of time, you will follow all the way up to design, implementation, QA, and release, and not to say support as well, right? Post-release support. So it's all about your, at which stage you are going to find the bug and how much time eventually you are going to end up. I'm sure this graph is not new, but when you look at this graph in the light of TDD, I hope we don't have to talk much about it, right? You are all able to get the essence of TDD in the terms of your entire project itself, right, guys? Right? Vijay, yes, I think you had a question. I couldn't answer it. I'll answer it now. So how much of TDD is enough? Does it mean we will not do any testing after TDD? Very good question, Vijay. So Vijay, for this, what I would do is, I will not answer it right now. Let me come to the next 2-3 slides, and then I would be in a better position to answer it. Okay? So let me just come back to those slides, and I will come back to your question as well. So now, when it comes to the traditional development, right? Your traditional development way is something which you are seeing right now. You design something, you implement it, and you test it, right? Design, implement, test. Whereas TDD way is you design something, okay? You design something, then before you implement the design, you write the test, right? Again write the test, again implement, again write the test, again implement. Okay, so this, if we look at it, I mean, this is kind of a step function, right, which keeps on going. So a different way of looking at it is this slide. It's kind of this cycle altogether, right? Design, test, implement, test, design, test, implement, test, and so on and so forth. This cycle keeps on going till the time you're done with your user story or whatever sprint. Sprint is typically kind of a 2 weeks kind of effort in agile way, wherein you are working on a specific objective altogether. So till the time you're given user story or given entire feature, whatever you are working on is not over. So this is typically called the TDD cycle. Is the TDD cycle clear to everybody? Clear to everybody? What exactly? So this TDD cycle should be kind of, you know, so now before I move to why unit test pig and all, I'll now answer Vijay's question. So Vijay, I was just waiting basically for these slides to go, right? So if you see this slide, Vijay, right, we are all talking about, you know, design, test, implement, test, design, test, implement, test, and nothing goes beyond the test itself, right? So first thing is, it must be quite clear, right, that after your feature is developed, you are definitely not going to perform any kind of testing in the terms of your unit level, right, Vijay? But it doesn't mean that your testing is over, right? Because this is something which is going to ensure that yes, your logic works perfectly, right? Guys, it is very important to know for others. It's not like your testers are jobless now. There are still testers, okay? There are still going to be testers, but what are they going to do now? Because you have taken care of everything, right? No, they are going to do something called functional testing or integration testing altogether, right? So your entire story is developed, somebody else's story is developed, now they are supposed to interact with each other, right? So that is your integration testing. The other thing is, there are some sort of, again, so this was integration testing. Functional testing, I am not sure, I heard somebody had worked in R spec and other stuff. So there is something called Cucumber, okay? They are typically used, this is a very English-like language which is used for functional testing, wherein you say, let's say, given this website, whatever this URL, when I press this button and give so and so parameters, I expect this kind of response. I'm just telling you, literally you write your test in that way, okay? So that is called end-to-end testing. In that case, you will be testing your, you know, front-end logic, you would be testing your back-end logic in the terms of controllers or whatever database procedures or something, whatever you have done. And then when the response comes back from the server up, and again when it is displayed, right, on the UI side, all different components of your entire architecture are going to be tested. They are the job of the testers, right? These are the jobs of the tester. Third thing, stress testing. So big data world, Now I'll talk about big data world, because big data world typically, and specifically if you talk about PIG and Hadoop projects and all, you are going to, so you are not going to work towards the front-end testing, right? Typically you do not really work on the UI side. You are going to work typically on the side of basically data crunching and all, right? So your logic works well, great, but does it work with 10 million data set? Does it work with 1 billion data set? Right? That's called a stress testing, right? Your MapReduce program is giving you the right result. It doesn't mean that it is going to give you the right result when there is a skewness in data, right? So these are some of the things, or it might not just give result, because your program would just hang in that case, right? So these kind of testings are still done by the testers. Vijay, your question was very important, that how much TDD is enough. I hope not only Vijay, but others also got the answer of it, right? Great. Great. Now, let me just continue on the next part of it. So now, thank you Gaurav so Gaurav just said that it's going good so far, and I just appreciate, So great. Now let me I'm just shifting the gears here. That was enough about TDD. We are not here to, learn about TDD, because there are several workshops which I have done earlier, and I just thought that this much introduction of TDD is going to be enough. Now let's talk about the second component, which is big data world. And when you talk about big data world, you typically talk about MapReduce jobs, right? Again, big data world, and within big data world, you are working in Hadoop domain. I'm assuming so, right? If you are talking about this, then you are going to talk about your, basically that program testing. Of course, that is very much relevant here as well. So if you're writing your MapReduce programs in Java, then you know that, right? What are the unit testing frameworks in MapReduce? What are that? Anybody? Right. Right. So MR unit, Mockito, right? They are the, we are not going to talk about them. Mockito, so basically MR unit uses Mockito internally. So earlier, previous releases had Mockito, but now it is suggested to use, right? So exactly Gaurav. Mockito is for mocking, yes. And this is internally, no. So earlier you could use Mockito to perform entire unit testing as well. So apart from mocking, you would be able to perform your entire test cases as well. But now with MR unit coming into picture, it uses those Mockito libraries and basically those APIs internally. Okay, that's why we suggest that go for MR unit. And in fact, there are others as well. I mean, we can probably talk about that sometime later when we are in the relevant webinar, right? So now, so that life is simpler when you are talking about, these kind of programs. Java, very good. Probably some of you who is working in Hadoop streaming or something, and you are writing your MapReduce programs, let's say in any other language like Python, like Ruby, great. You have your own testing frameworks in Python. You have your own testing frameworks in Ruby, right? And other things as well. But what about PIG? Because if you have already worked in big data domain for more than 1.5 years, kind of, or let's say around 1 year also, I'm sure you would have figured out, can somebody answer how much of MapReduce jobs do you actually write now? Those people who are already working on it. How much? How many? Out of 10. Let's say you are writing 10, kind of Hadoop programs. How many of them are actually MapReduce jobs today? at least in our organization and in other organizations which have matured, they are very few, only 1 or 1.5. So what I'm trying to say is only 10 to 15% requirements actually require you to write MapReduce job. Remaining things, people typically prefer Pig or Hive. Right, guys? Why? Because they are the wrappers on the top of it, and you just work at kind of, very high level thing, and all of your requirements or whatever, data flows. When I'll talk about Pig is a data flow language, right? It's not a programming language. So whatever data flows you will express, they would be converted into the MapReduce jobs, right? So you're not going to write much of the MapReduce programs. That is something which I wanted to convey, right? So then why should I talk about unit testing? Because I have again my own reasons, guys. And not only, these are not my reasons, these are like the reasons which I have heard many times from people. Pig is not a programming language. Come on, what are you talking about? It's not a programming language. It's a data flow language. So why should I test it? It's just a data flow, right? My data flow, anyway, it's self-evident. Why do you really need to test it? Because I'm not writing any code to implement that. I have just explained the data flow. Pig is the one which is implementing it. So why are you asking me to write the unit test case? Very valid point, guys. Very valid point. Okay. It just converts the Pig latent data flows to MapReduce jobs. So again, this is what I'm not doing, right? Another thing is, these are some of the reasons. The other thing is, talk about, Pig. So in big data projects, if you are going to use Pig, you will typically use for data factory kind of operations. I hope it is clear what do we mean by data factory. So there is a thin line between Pig and Hive, right? Pig is used for data factory kind of operations, whereas Hive is typically used for data warehousing kind of operations. So data factory typically like data prep. You are having some raw data, from that you are preparing some usable data. And data warehousing, it's all about your polished data, or your prepare that kind of usable data is now ready. You just have to prepare some reports on the top of it. That's typically called the data warehousing kind of operation, right? So you will love to use Hive in those cases. So anyway, coming back to the scope of Pig, you are going to use Pig for your data factory operations altogether in your project. So since we are here not talking about a programming language, does unit testing make sense at all? And Pig already comes with some diagnostic operators, right? There are diagnostic operators already, like illustrate, like describe, like explain, right? Like sample. So there are already some diagnostic operators available. So extra testing, you're asking me to do extra testing. It is going to be an overhead. This is another very, very valid reason as well, right? So all of these reasons, if you are going to talk about these reasons, if you are having these reasons, or if you have heard these reasons from your team, right, they are going to lead to even bigger problems, as the testing in the big data world is again going to be data driven in nature. Guys, this is the big difference between a big data testing profile versus a normal testing profile. Okay, here in big data world, even if you talk about the testing, it is going to be data driven. It is not going to be just some functionality driven altogether, okay, or the parameter driven kind of testing. So better make sure that it works, because your logic. So what happens is, I am sharing my own experience, guys. It happened with a retailer. We had to process basically last 10 years of, their kind of financial data in our program, 10 years. So it's like our job was running 1 year, was taking the input of 1 year data at one point of time, process it, then take, last year data, last to last year data, and so on and so forth. Basically 10 iterations. So when we were developing it, and these were very starting days, we developed it, and we kind of used various tools which we only developed for testing, and kind of we did the testing with year 1, year 2, year 3, up to year 6. when we were confident that all 6 years data is matching, we were good. And of course, it was a MapReduce job which was going to take quite a lot of time. So we said we are done with it, and we got a stamp that okay, tested, even from the client as well. Very good. Now it went into production. Okay. That job was monthly. After 1 month of going into production, when it started processing, everything was fine. Only 9th year, I mean, today, let's say you are in 2014, right? 9 years back. So 2005 data, or yes, I think 2005, right? So 2005 data was giving us problem. Why? What happened? Kind of. Everybody was blaming data. Everybody was blaming the client. No, it is thoroughly tested and everything. You know what? There was a bug in the program. And just that, for continuously 8 years, we never ever got the input data such that we could have tested that bug. Nobody could identify that bug as well. And those were the starting days. We were not even having pig unit, you know, basically it was not even pig unit, pig program also. It was kind of Hadoop streaming program. Okay, so we were not even focusing on the testing, and we got the stamp even from the client. So again, it was a different nightmare. But yes, so big data testing, if you talk about it, if your output is coming exactly same as whatever reference system is, you cannot really say that your program is working correctly. At best, you can say that I'm making the same mistake as the original system. At best, if at all you are making. Guys, make sense? I'm just kind of sharing some of my experiences as well in between, and must be useful for some of you. Okay, Manish has some point. All these terms are new for me. Are you also going to cover basic introduction to big data, which can help me to relate pig, hive, and other terms? Sorry, Manish, I would have loved to. And in fact, probably, when I take big data and Hadoop batches, at that point of time I do these things. But it is like, the time is very limited to deal with that, Manish. But yes, after this webinar, if you just want to be in touch with me for some time, I can definitely. Okay, that much I can do for you. Now, so that was about what is pig, kind of, and again, the reasons why should we not really test pig, and we have seen why they are wrong as well. Now, let's come to the final point. It's about what is pig unit, right? And sure, Shailendra, I would. Okay, so what is pig unit? Pig unit is, as many of you would have heard about, it's basically the unit, or guessed already, it's the unit testing framework for your pig scripts. Okay, you can test them at unit, basically per script level itself. It is not really a star unit framework. When I say star unit, it's not like MR unit framework, or for example JUnit framework, or you go to any other one. They have what most of the people have done is they have just built their own JUnit wrappers, and they typically call it, so that entire assembly is called star unit framework. Okay, it's not really that kind of framework. Okay, so what does it really do, right? So guys, pig unit is actually a library which can be used with JUnit tests to run your pig scripts within the JUnit test itself. So you are going to run, you are writing your pig script, and you can just run them using whatever, right? JUnit, from the JUnit test you can run it. Next thing, you can override the variables in pig script to provide the data from test rather than the external sources. So for example, when you write your pig scripts, right, I'm sure you say the first statement. What is the first statement always? Assuming that you are not using any UDF. What is the first statement in a pig script? It's the load statement, right? You load some file from somewhere in HDFS, right? So instead of loading the data, you can just mock it, right? You can just say that my input data is now coming from the test rather than from a source, okay? And then you can inspect the values of your pig script relations also, right, for the given input data. And the next thing is your store statements can be converted into no operations. When I talk about no operations, your pig script will execute, but it will not really store anything, okay? So that your pig scripts are going to run without any side effects. So you are sure that whatever you are running, be it the local mode, be it the MapReduce mode, is not really going to create any other, folder, and then is not going to create any problems for anybody else. Is that part clear to everybody? That these are the different, aspects of it. Now, I think we are almost on time. Let's look at a small demo. But before I go to the demo, I hope things are quite clear to you. What exactly is TDD? What exactly it means in big data world? And why are we talking about pig unit? Because for the other things, you have your frameworks available. But for pig scripts, you don't really have much. Right? Clear, right? Only Shalendra has confirmed. What about others? Thanks, Pooja. Thanks, Shalendra, for confirming. Great. Great. Now, let me just go back to. Thanks, Ashu. Ashutosh. I hope you won't mind me calling you Ashu. I have a friend by the same name. Okay. Great. Now, guys, escape. Great. Hold on. I'm going into my virtual machine. So this is my VMware machine. In fact, the name of the machine says Spark Demo. So basically, I have created this machine to, I do take the Spark batch as well. So at that point of time, but again, it's like my everything. Okay. So wait. By the way, when I am in the virtual machine mode, I will not be able to see your comments. So please bear with me because it's kind of full screen mode. Okay. So, yep, I'm not able to see any of your comments right now. So guys, I have multiple projects. Please don't ask me what these projects are. I'll just focus on demo of pig unit right now. First of all, are you all able to see my screen and virtual machine? I hope you are. Right? Great. Thank you for confirming. Yeah. Okay, now I'm going back to the machine. Okay. Now guys, I have just created a very simple Java project. No Maven, nothing stops you from creating your Maven project. But I just want to keep the things as simple as that. So you can just see that if you just create a project, only things which you have to note is you need to have pig.jar and pigunit.jar available with you. These now, unfortunately, pig doesn't come with pig.jar and pigunit.jar. Like kind of they are not ready-made jars which are available. So either you can just download them from internet, or the best thing is, which I typically follow, I typically download a release of pig with the source code, and then I generate the jar out of it. Okay, so and jar, and then it just generates the jar out of that thing. So when you say this, then it will be creating pig.jar and pigunit.jar. These two have to be in your class path, and then Hemcrest core and JUnit. These are the other two jars which I had to download. They don't really come along with your pig, either with your pig installation or any of your Hadoop installation thing. You have to download them separately. These are the only 4 jars you need in your class path, right? I hope it is quite clear to everybody, right guys? I just minimized it just to see whether it is clear to everybody, or is there any question in this side? No questions. That's great. Okay, so just take care of this part, that these 4 jars are something which you have to think about. Now, I'll tell you a bit about a script. Actually, I would have loved to, write the script after writing the test, but again, it is a demo kind of a thing. So I had to, it's a very simple, small pig script, 1, 2, 3, 4, actually 4 lines of pig script. You can actually see that what am I trying to achieve. There is a marks input file. Okay, so there is this marks input file which is about 1 roll number, 1 subject, and the marks which the roll number has achieved in a subject. So you can see that first 3 records are all about 1 English, 1 science, 1 mathematics, and then similarly roll number 2, what are the different marks, roll number 3, what are the different marks in all 3 subjects, right? That's my simple data, 3 roll numbers, each roll number marks in 3 different subjects, right? This is my input data set, and that's exactly what I'm loading here, right? Roll number, subject, and marks. And what am I doing? I am just interested. So what I want to achieve is I just want to get the average marks attained by, got by every roll number altogether. Very simple thing, right? For every student, what were their average marks altogether, right? That's what I just want to achieve. So in that case, I don't really need a subject. So in the for each statement, I have ignored subject and I'm just generating roll number and marks. And then I'm grouping it by the roll number. And finally, I'm saying group by average altogether, right? Group by and average of marks. Right, guys? Is the setup clear to everybody? What I'm trying to achieve? Whether I hope this part is clear to everybody, right? Let me just kind of, great. Okay, Avdesh, sure, not a problem. See this, for now, please just ignore this statement, set IO sort. I will come to that. Just ignore my first statement. See this, the first one, I'm loading a file, marks file, right? This one, right? It is having 3 columns, roll number, subject, and marks. I'm interested per roll number, what are the average marks, right? In order to determine it, I can just ignore subject, right? So in the for each statement, what am I doing? For each marks file, I'm just generating roll number and marks. I'm ignoring subject. And in the next line, I'm just grouping it by roll number. And the next line to that, I'm just calculating the average. Is that clear, Avdesh? That's what is the objective of this pig script. Very simple one, right? Now, let us see some of the pig unit test cases, which I kind of wrote for it. So sample tests. Hold on, I'm going again back in the maximum mode. Okay. So this is my sample test. Okay. And you can see this. Here I'm saying public, final, string, and script. Script I have defined here. Which script I'm trying to test? That is home user pig unit demo testable script.pig. Exactly the script which you just saw. See this, testable script.pig. Right? I just gave the path of this script. I'm kind of hard coding it here, but you know that very well. You can get it as an argument also when you are executing it. Right, guys? I hope it must be, I mean, these are some basic things anyway. Right? Now, I have written 3 tests here. Okay? I've written 3 tests on this pig script. Again, this is kind of an overkill, but the idea behind these 3 tests is that I'm testing it in 3 different ways altogether. Okay, so let us first go to the first test. Okay, so the first test says, here I'm setting up the arguments. So you just have to say first test, parse exception, IO exception is something which you have to take care, because create default test would throw it. I'll talk about it. Okay, but my class is extending something called pig test base. Okay, pig test base is something which I myself have written. The reason I could have just extended pig test. Typically you just need to extend pig test, but I am extending the pig test base altogether. The reason is there are kind of some repeated functions which I have just created here. Okay, mock pig feed, and then create the default test with different or number of arguments, reading up the properties file, etc., etc. So there are various utility functions which I have written. You might be implementing it in a different way, the way you whatever you want, but I kind of like abstraction. So I've just created a pig test base.java which is going to have the utility functions. I just have to extend it, and then only thing is the way typically you write your tests with @test annotation, and this is going to be your first test. In that, the first thing is I'm setting up an array of string arguments, and I'm just kind of providing some of the arguments here. Now what is this? IP_file is equal to this. What does it mean? It means if you go here, you can see this $IP file. So my pig script is parameterized here, right? And I'm passing this IP file parameter from here, from my pig script. Ideally, in your production environment, you would be getting it from one of the configuration files or parameter files. Right, guys? You must be getting it. But here, I'm kind of, providing this thing from my program itself. And then I'm just calling a method create default test, and I'm passing the argument and basically this argument and the script, this. And I'm just calling create default test. Okay, what does this create default test do? It is basically a method in, it is basically a method in pig test base which will return the pig test instance to you. And what is it doing? It is just doing nothing, but it is kind of, whatever arguments you passed, whatever script path you have given, apart from that, it is going to give you pig server and cluster. And what are they? They are going to be local. So if you look at it, pig server and pig context, and @ before itself is setting up here. Execution type is going to be local, and then remaining things, pig context is just like your context object which you are just trying to get, and then your cluster instances, just created the way, just passing this pig context to it serves the purpose. Now, it is always suggested to run your pig test cases in the local mode. That's why you are seeing it as local, but nothing stops you from running them on HDFS paths also. In that case, instead of local, it is going to be MapReduce. Okay, exact type dot MapReduce. Remember this. Is this clear to everybody? I mean, I hope, I'm not expecting everybody to understand each and every line of this code, but you should be able to understand the flow. I hope it is clear, right? Avdesh, Vijay, Shailendra, Ashutosh, right? I mean, I'm just checking with you guys. Right, exactly. So now, just a sec. Seems like somebody, great. So now, let me just go back to the machine, and I'm going back to this. So basically, I've just created a default test, and see this. This is my hard-coded input, wherein I'm just passing basically roll number 1 data and nothing else. And in output, I'm expecting the average. So what is the average of 40, 45 and 50? It is 45, right? So I'm saying I'm setting my expectation as 1, 45.0. That is my output. And then mock pig feed is, again, you don't really need to do all of that. Again, it is just for the extensibility perspective. I have created my own class wherein I just pass this pig test object which I got, right? I just pass it to mock pig feed, okay? And what is it? If you look at mock pig feed, it is a program. Sorry, it's basically method here in the pig test base, which will create another instance of mock pig feed type object. Okay, so I'm not really going into that direction, guys. It's all about, I'm just initializing it, and then only thing is mock pig feed is something which will provide you some utility methods like mocking the input aliases. So if you see, what do I mean by it? You have this input, marks input file, marks file, right? Marks file. That was your input relation. I am saying treat marks file as input. And what is input? Input is your hard-coded values. Is that clear? Mock input alias. Basically, I'm saying treat your this marks file, instead of loading it from whatever location you were loading, I don't care. You treat it as if input is your marks file. And then I'm asserting the output, saying that output should be same as OP should be equal to output. What is OP? If you look at it, OP is my final store, right? Final relation. So I'm expecting my OP to be this. So given that I have this input, I expect my output is this. Is that language clear to everybody? Because after that it is just a matter of execution and seeing the different variations of it. Guys, this is a checkpoint, right? I hope it is clear. Great. Now let me just continue on the execution part of it. So right now I have written some other tests also. For now I'm kind of commenting them. I will come back very quickly because those things are going to be very simple there, and I have commented this as well. Control S, go back. This is my sample test. Then right click, say run as your JUnit test, and then see what will happen. Actually, I should have made it fail first, but anyway. I mean, I'm sure you guys are also busy, right? So we need some more time for that. So you can see this. It's actually green, right? So it succeeded. Let me make it fail. Let me make it fail. So instead of IP, let me call it as IP1. And let it run once more. Sorry. We should get a feel of failure as well, right? See this. It just failed. It just failed. So initially, for you, you just saw the success, right? But you should ideally be starting with this kind of failure. Undefined parameter, IP1 file. I did not specify it. So it simply showed that the JUnit test setup itself is wrong, right? There is something wrong with the pig. Oh, sorry. There is something wrong with the pig script. So you have to go back. And instead of this, I've just set it up here. And when I run it, it is going to pass next time. But anyway, now let me move to the second test case as well. And just a sec, guys. I'm just closing these unnecessary classes. Okay. Now, how's the second test case different? Okay. Second test case, all I'm doing is, many times you would have seen only one expectation setting is good, right? But now I have increased the data set in the second test. See this. This is second test. I have increased the data set, and this is my input. Apart from roll number 1, I'm providing roll number 2 as well, and accordingly my output has changed, right? Ideally you could have done it in the single step, but I'm just showing it to you, kind of, how to give single, just in case if your pig script is producing only one line kind of output, or it is supposed to produce, multiple line of type of output, how to do that, right? It should not be like, oh, Vishal just showed something and now whatever I'm supposed to work is going to be different, right? It should not be the case. So this is another way, right? Now you are expecting your multi-line output, average for rule number 1 and average for rule number 2, right? And again, the very same thing, remaining things remain as it is. All I'm going to do is uncomment, and then you will see now instead of one test, we are running 2 test cases. See this, first test, second test. And then so first test is clear, you can see that green. Second one is going on, you can see this arrow. Second is also over. If you extend it, you will see that green. Both are clear. How much time it took to complete each test also. Saw that, guys? Right? Now let me, so there is one last twist to this. This one, whatever you just saw, it was like hard coding your input, or rather than hard coding, you are just providing it within the program. Sometimes you might be having a smaller, a bit larger data. You would like to supply it in the from a file itself, rather than supplying it from a program also. So you can see this here again, arguments, create default test, but see this, test.assert output, right? I'm just asserting output. I'm not mocking my input here. So this example below shows the passing of your unit test using basically a specific file as an input, and you should note that we did not mock the input feed here at all. Okay, so now whatever you will pass in the arguments here, that would become your input file. Right now I'm just keeping the very same input file. You can keep some other input file or some whatever name you want to give. You can just pass that particular input file for your test, and you can set your expectation. So in the assert output, you are just asserting only and only output, given that your input file is whatever you have specified here, right? That's the third way of testing. So just a sec. Now guys, how many tests do we have? 3 tests. And let me run it. Okay, so somehow I don't know why does it pick third test first. So it is going to run third, first, second, all 3 tests one by one. So you can see that it just got passed. Next test it's running, 7 seconds it is passed, and the last test is going on, and all are done. You get the report here, right? Ideally you would be writing your test case first, and then you would not be having any pig script. Ideally, okay, you would be writing a test case first, you will not be having any pig script. Let it fail, write enough pig script, do it again. But we typically call them as baby steps. You might not like to do, or I would say rather, you would not like to overdo the things, right? To keep the things simple, you would not like to overdo the things. If you have fairly simple and let's say some 20 lines or 30 lines kind of big scripts, it is suggested not to have more than 2 or 3 unit test cases on a script. But again, it just depends upon the criticality of the piece of the code. Is that clear? I hope it kind of helped others, right? And this brings our session also to an end. And I just hope that it added some value to, you know, your existing knowledge repository altogether. That's it. Thank you. Thank you guys for attending it, being here so early in the morning. And thank you, Ashutosh. Would love to stay connected. Oh yes. So Gaurav, yes, but as part of our policy, I can't really give you this thing right now in the webinar. What I can do is I'm sharing my Edureka ID to you. From there you can get connected to me on LinkedIn. Right? Not only to you, I'm sending it to everybody. Edureka.in, and I've just sent it to everybody. You can feel free to drop a mail and we can just be connected. Not a problem. Okay. So again, thanks, and I'm logging out now. Guys, this PPT would be available and this recording would be available in LMS for everybody. Now, logging off. And do provide your feedback, guys. Very important. Yeah. Bye. Bye for now.